Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. Today we have the White Scar Space Marines versus Adeptus Mechanicus Forge World Lucius. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, so for today, I am playing the Mechanicus. I'm bringing 2,000 points, or 1,990, of the Mechanicus from Forge World Lucius. And so these guys give me +1 to my save from damage 1, and +3 inches to my shooting. And so I figured that the Mechanicus is going to be overall a shooting army with some melee. So I'm going to start off with my Warlord, Tech Priest Manipulus. He has I don't know, all this stuff. He basically has I don't know, how do I bring up his stuff? His ridiculous, like, all these abilities. So his Warlord trait, Archon Mechanism.
Lord.
Yeah. So he has a 5-up Feel No Pain. He selects Core within 3 inches, and in the next command phase, they can ignore any modifiers to Ballistic Skill. Then he's a part of the Artisans, and so that'll give me some special abilities for Artisan Advance for the Tech Priests. We'll see how that goes. And then he has a Marginal Lance, which heavy damage, but I'm not expecting him to do that. He's a buffer, and he has the Warlord trait, Masterwork Bionics. He has a 4-up invulnerable save and -1 damage. Ton of ridiculous stuff like that. So, and then moving on is a Scutari Marshal for his buffs. Exemplar Eternity Aura, so he'll give a nearby all Scutari within 6 inches have reroll 1s to hit and wound. Useful. Then he has the Techno Archaeologist, which is just there for his abilities and his Omni Scramblers and his help to the Cataphrons and stuff like that. Yeah. And then, of course, it's the first time I've played Imperial for a while, so I'm bringing an Evisor Assassin for something that is remotely familiar to me in this ridiculously complex army. Basically, the Deep Strike, 3d6 for charge. Assassins really are not that strong now in Nephilim because their greatest abilities are hidden behind command traits or CP strats that cost 1 or 2. They each have 2 strats, one costs 1 and one costs 2. For 1 CP strat, 4-up Feel No Pain for that phase, and 2 CP to do their close combat phase a second time. So, very useful, but not as effective now. Alright, on to troops. 2 full units of Scutari Rangers with, I don't know where it is, an arc rifle. Each have 1 arc rifle, so that'll be useful. These will be pretty strong. We'll see how that goes. And then a full unit of Cataphron Destroyers. And so this is for, like, heavy infantry and such, so these guys should be able to do very well. Then, onto elites. We have 2 units of Fulbright Electro Priest Max unit. So these guys are very strong in melee. They basically just deal out tons of mortal wounds. Like, roll to 6 to wound is 2 mortal wounds flat. These guys have a 5-up invulnerable save and 5-up Feel No Pain. And the first time they destroy a unit, they get buffed to a 4-up invulnerable save, and like they have like some abilities on their charges and stuff. Very strong, very good. And each of them will have a Scorpius Dune Rider to help transport them and protect them. And there's nothing very special about these guys. But then moving on to heavy support, we have Castellan Robots, which are very tough, very strong, and they'll be fighting against. They'll basically be my anchor in the battlefield. Then we have a Onager Doomcrawler, which is given the Neutron Laser, super anti-vehicle weapon. And then we have Scorpius Disintegrator, which is just like a heavy tank, and so I saw it, and also it can one of its weapons can ignore line of sight, so that'll be useful as far as I can tell. So I don't really know how Mechanicus is fully played, so I'm basically just going with heavy shooty and something to keep the enemy off so I can keep shooting them. And that is 2,000 points of Lucius.
Alright, you guys, so I have 1981 points, so 1,981 points of White Scars. Couldn't find anything to do with the last 19 points. And obviously with White Scars, they very much have a theme, and I was very excited about the theme. They have a lot of really interesting benefits, so they can advance and charge. They don't incur penalties for firing assault weapons in the same time that they charge, and in the Assault Doctrine, when they charge, they get an extra damage, and that's just army-wide. So that's pretty exciting. So my Warlord is not the character, so I brought their only character, Corsaro Khan. He's like their chapter's headhunter, which is interesting. But so my Warlord is actually their other unique HQ, which is a generic character, Khan on bike. And he has a couple of things. One, he has a buckler, which is unique to the White Scars. So basically in melee, he has +1 to his armor save, which is kind of cool. And then he has a Khan spear, which on the charge gives him ×2 strength for those attacks, and it's a -3 D3 damage. And so he's quite mean. And because he's a biker, he can auto advance 6 inches. He's also a chapter master. Now, what I did give him that's not shown here is the because it wouldn't give it as an option in Battle Scribe. I assume it's because it's just a unique unit to a minor chapter. So anyway, but so I gave him both a Warlord trait and a relic. So the relic essentially gives him always ×2 strength for his attack, with no debuffs on that. So he's always gonna have strength 8 on his swings. And then it keeps the other stats the same, so it's still -3 and D3 damage. And then his Warlord trait is on the charge or heroic intervention. Until the end of that turn, he gains D3 attacks. So he's super mean. So on the charge, he'll have somewhere between 6 and 8 attacks, which is crazy. I was going to give him another one, but that would have used my very last command point because I am an Outrider detachment, which was anytime he kills a character, he gains permanently +1 attack, which is, I think it's Trophy Hunter, Trophy Taker is the Warlord trait, but I decided against it. Anyway, so that is my Warlord, and he is very mean. Moving on to Corsaro Khan, he is a character, so he is what he is. He has a relic weapon. When against characters, he can reroll the wound and damage roll. So he has, he's pretty mean against characters. He has a ability that White Scar core or character units within 6 inches that makes a melee attack if they charge gets +1 to wound. So that's pretty cool against maybe heavier duty things. And then he has, I guess it's a relic pistol that anytime he shoots an enemy within 12 inches on a 4-up takes a mortal wound. So that's kind of cool because he just has a regular bolt pistol. Okay, so moving on. So this is an Outrider detachment, so I had a lot of fast attack options, which is also why I have so few command points going into this game. But so for my troops, I just took 1 squad of Incursors because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with objectives. So I was like, it's good to have 1 objective secured unit, and they are the cheapest. So I took them. They do have the Haywire Grenade because I ended up having extra points. So they have that Haywire Mine. And it's literally just a basic 6-man squad with a sergeant. And then jumping all the way over to heavy supports, I just have 1 squad of Eliminators with the Las Fusils. Just because it's 75 points for a small squad of essentially Las Cannons. And I was like, why not? What's the worst that could happen? With Elites, I chose a squad that will ride with Corsaro Khan. I say ride, but they're actually on foot and don't have a transport. So I took an Apothecary, which I made Chief Apothecary, Shock Surprise, and behind him is a full squad of Blade Guard vets, and the Sergeant has the Neo Volkite pistol, so it has a chance to do a couple mortal wounds on the shots. And they're literally, I just want them to go and sit on the middle objective and just beat the mess out of anything that comes around, hopefully. He has a heavy shooting army, so I don't know how it'll actually go. And that's it for my elites, because you only have 2 options in the Outrider detachment. Now, into the interesting stuff behind is 3 squads of Outriders. Now, because they're Outriders, you can't actually do anything to them, so they're just a base 3-man squad. Now, they do have like 5 attacks on the charge, which is like ridiculous, 5-6 attacks, I don't even know. And then in the Assault Doctrine, they all do 2 damage apiece. So their White Scars are really a biker unit, a biker army, and so they're ridiculous. On the flanks are 2 identical squads of a biker, just the regular bikers. Now the sergeants the models have power fists because I couldn't find one with a thunder hammer. But so the sergeants both have thunder hammers, and the attack bikes both have multi-meltas. And then the rest of the squad all has just chain swords and bolt pistols, or just chain swords. Yeah. So both squads have that. And then in the back middle is a Storm Speeder Thunderstrike, which is probably one of the better of the speeders. And he is an anti-vehicle speeder. And so it all kind of fits within the theme, except for, I guess, the troops and the eliminators. But, you know, just really mean, really in your face, biker army. So yeah, so that's my 2,000 points, and I'm pretty excited to try out the White Scars.
Alright, so for the mission today is Death and Zeal 3-2. It's a Control 1, Control 2, Control More, and the secondary, or the mission secondary, is at the end of each player's turn. If the player whose turn it is scores 2 victory points if they satisfy one of the following conditions. They score 3 if they satisfy both. Control every objective marker on the battlefield, or control at least one objective they didn't control at the start of their turn. And the second thing is they destroyed at least one enemy unit that was within range of an objective marker at the start of their turn. So killing an enemy on an objective and taking it is a good way to get the secondary points. Alright, so for placing out the terrain, basically what I was thinking was I need open line of sight. I don't need that much cover, I just need a little bit. And then from that point on, I would just get my troops ready and able to do their fighting. And so that's pretty much what I was thinking. So I just wanted line of sight, 8 places to move around in, and I wanted to make sure that all the other objectives could be easily seen, visibly, to be shot at. And so that's what I was going for.
Yeah, so I was kind of going, I guess kind of similar. So I definitely wanted terrain because I know Mechanicus is a shooty army. But I didn't want so much that it created like big choke points because bikes are a bit thick. And so that could have been problematic. So really, I wanted some lines of sight, but really more for charges and direct movement. And so just enough to kind of block stuff. So I don't know how well that worked. I guess we'll find out. Yeah.
Alright, so for secondaries, for the Mechanicus, have engaged on all fronts. I know it's very unlikely, but I kind of have to push out to contest and stall him, so maybe that'll work. Eradication of Flesh, which is basically if my vehicles kill more units than he kills my vehicles. And then raise the banners high because I cannot find a good third one. So yeah, that pretty much was my ideal, is that the raise the banners high might give me a chance. I have a lot of small chef units and characters and stuff, so we'll see how that goes.
Alright, so for mine, I actually, interestingly enough, went with 2 Space Marine secondaries, but one is the White Scar secondary, which is I can score up to 5 points per turn with it, so 3 victory points for each character or monster unit that was destroyed by a melee attack with a White Scars unit that made a charge move this turn. 1 point for each enemy unit that was destroyed from a unit in melee that charged, and then another victory point for a unit that was destroyed by ranged attacks by units that advanced. So it's really encouraging aggressive play and lots of running. And then Oaths of Moment is the other, but this is the Space Marine Codex, so just the basic Space Marine ones. Oaths of Moment, I was basically like, well, if I'm going to take for the White Scars, I might as well double up on it. So I gain 1 victory point if any character, vehicle, or monster unit was destroyed by one of my units, essentially. That battle round. And then 1 victory point provided none of my units fail a morale check, and none of them fall back. And then 1 victory point if a core or a character unit from my army is wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. And then engage on all fronts because of the running and the fighting. So I actually think I might have a good secondaries game going this game.
Alright, so since I have no idea what I was doing, and I really need to be very cautious for the Mechanicus, so the idea going in was to place the characters first, as best I can, to bait out some of his better units so I could see where it was. And so I started off with my Warlord, and his Secondaries Marshal, Techno-Archaeologist, and then from there I just closed ranks and just kept some of the more important vehicles behind cover, preparing for going first or second turn, and I tried to counteract where the movements of his troops are. However, his movement is very varied, so he can easily play tricks, but I have a few movement tricks up my sleeve as well. And so my overall idea was to center my troops all around in one area and then being able to respond to his rapid movements and stuff. And so that kind of what it was my idea going in. So my Scorpion Doom Riders are in positions to attack both objectives. The center has the Castellan robots nearby. Secondaries Rangers are in a good position to do pretty much whatever need be. The vehicles, the heavy firepower is safe for now to prep and rotate for whatever target it needs since they have such long range. And the Cataphron Destroyers are in a very good spot to counter pretty much everything. And that was my ideas going forward.
Yeah, so essentially, I don't know if I had like the greatest plan, but I know he has a lot of shooting, and I know they have decent range. So I was trying to stay out of range, A, and B, stay kind of near cover-ish, because he's right, my army is super mobile. And so I can get anywhere I really want to be pretty quick. So I wasn't super worried about, like, for instance, my big bike squad, putting them a little farther back, just because of how far they can actually move. And yeah, so basically I just kind of poised myself to be able to take objectives, and you know, charge stuff. So I don't know. My plan was relatively simple: don't get shot, be able to charge stuff. So yeah.
All right. So who should go first? Who should go second? As far as it goes for me, I want to go first so I can wipe out a quarter of your army guaranteed off the map in the first turn with my extra 3 inches to all my guns and how everything is compact and tight. But if I go second, I do have pre-game movements, and so I can shuffle around some of my infantry back. And so he will basically, first turn, I will kill a lot of his guys. If I go second, I may lose some. He could get into combat. It's unlikely. Because the guys who... Yeah, I'm ridiculously far away. It's unlikely he'll be able to reach me on the first turn. It's possible, but it's very unlikely, especially with my pre-game movement for the Secondaries. I'll have advantage there. And so basically, if I go first, that's very good for me. If I go second, I can make it work very well. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I'm thinking kind of the same, except I guess technically it's the opposite. I think I actually want to go second. I know you have a lot of shooting, and there's really almost nothing I can do about that except try and weather it out. But what that would do is you would end up in positions where then I could do what I do as a White Scar. Presumably, this is the first time I've ever played them, which is charge in and, you know, punch you in the face. So, I don't know what to expect as far as that first turn shooting, though, so that's the only kind of alarming part. But you know, if I get first turn, then I don't really have a lot of choices. I just gotta kind of go. I mean, technically, I guess I could use it to adjust and hide a little better, but, you know, that's about it.
Yeah, it is a difficult mess. So, let's see how it goes. Alright, so...
Alright. Got a 6.
I got a 1.
That's unfortunate.
Alright, this is the second time in a row I've gone second. Alright, White Scars turn 1. Alright, so the Secondaries get a free 3-inch movement and the start of the first battle round. And so what I plan to do was, if I went second, I would pull back this Secondaries that was in the front to make it very difficult for them to charge, so 3 inches back. the other Skitar unit towards the bottom. I move them in a position where my opponent cannot possibly reach them, but I'll have complete line of sight, shooting and everything. This whole southern area is completely under my range. And so that was just the idea going forward.
Alright, you guys. So, in the command phase, my chapter master, the warlord, gave the yellow squad of bikers the chapter master rerolls. So they have full rerolls to hit, and actually that's it. So that was my command phase. Movement was a whole lot of running. So Space Marine bikes automatically run 6, and they had 14-inch movement. So they all had a 20-inch move essentially. So the blue squad over on the side, I basically moved out of line of sight, just kind of some positioning. Then I ran the incursors, and they only had 6-inch movement, and then I rolled a 6, so they had 12, but it was not enough to hide them, so I don't know if they'll be there the next round. But you know, it's whatever. That's, you know, what, I don't know. Anyway, then the blade guard ran, and I rolled a 6, so, oh no, I rolled a 5. So they moved 11 inches. The grate in the middle took 2 inches off, but it also gives them light and dense cover, so I figured that was probably worth it, given their armor and armor of contempt, make them a little harder to hit and move. And then obviously Corsaro and the Apothecary ran up just behind them to be there as well. And then my bikes started moving, my other bikes. So the yellow squad ran its full, you know, whatever, 20 inches, and so they got in a really good spot to charge. So I had my my warlord, follow up next to them. He's a little farther back, but he still got at most an 8-inch charge, or at least, I guess he could hit a 7-inch charge technically. But anyway, so he has an 8-inch charge, and that's not bad at all. That's actually probably pretty good. And then my purple squad ran over to take the objective. I was hoping to get them a little farther into cover so he couldn't actually see me. But with the combat about to happen, I think they'll be okay as far as shooting goes. I could be wrong. He's still got those giant robots. And then my red squad, my big biker squad, I actually had no idea what to do with them. They're pretty far back, so I could have moved them onto the for you guys, it would be the bottom right objective, where my incursors are, but that's it, and they would have been basically just a giant blob of targets, and I was not super keen on that idea. So I just kind of moved them into cover, and then next round they'll be in a really good position to do just about anything. And then I also, with my Storm Speed or Thunderstrike, no idea what to do, so I just moved him a little farther into cover, so that way he also, with his 16-inch movement, could do things next turn. And my Eliminators didn't move, because they actually had pretty good line of sight to a lot of stuff going on, so they could see the Castellans, for instance. And so, yeah, actually a really good movement phase, I think, as far as White Scars are concerned. And I'm hoping to do a lot of ridiculous damage for no reason. Alright, you guys, so for my shooting phase, basically everything ran, and none of them have assault weapons, which I did not think about so much. But what that means is that basically no one could shoot, with the exception of my Eliminators. So my Eliminators shot at his Castellans. One guy missed on the hit roll, one guy missed on the wound roll, so one guy's shot went through, because it's -3, and it just did a flat 3 damage. And that was my whole shooting phase. Alright, so essentially in my charge phase, I had 2 charges, so it was my Warlord and my Outriders. And so what I did was I used a stratagem, Fierce Rivalries, with my only command point. So basically the first charge of the turn, I get to roll 3d6 and discard the lowest. So my Warlord had to roll an 8. He rolled like a 10 or an 11 or something like that. And then in that, he overwatched with the Secondaries, And luckily it was Overwatch because there was a crap ton of shots. So I think 5 went through. He rolled 5 6s. And of that, 4 made their way to wounds. And then he saved 3 out of them, so he did take a single wound on that. And then the arc rifle in the group did
Just
not
missed.
miss to hit. Yeah. And then after that, my Outriders, the yellow squad, charged in. And they needed a 2.5, so a 3 essentially, and they rolled a 4, high rolling, and they were able to get in as well. And so yeah, so charge phase went well. We'll see how combat goes because he has the points to interrupt. I don't know if it's actually worth it for him to interrupt, but we'll see. All right, you guys, so for combat phase, so my Warlord swung on the Cataphrons, and 3 of his attacks went through. Unfortunately, they're D3 damage, and I rolled 1s and 2s, so I killed 1 Cataphron instead of potentially 3 of them. And so that was kind of embarrassing as a White Scars Warlord. But then the Outriders swung, and 12 went through. He saved 3 of them. He needed a 4-up, so it was kind of a bum roll on his end. And so 9 of the Secondaries died. He pulled from the front, but I was able to consolidate, so the Outriders just kind of stuck it in. And yeah, he swung back with his Cataphrons on my Warlord, and only 2 went through, but he saved both of them because of the Buckler. He has +1 save in combat, so he has a 2-up. And yeah, and so fight phase went okay. Obviously he's still got some really, really big mean stuff floating around because I only fought infantry, so we'll see what happens in this next turn. All right, you guys, so for secondaries, because obviously you can't score primary in the first turn, I got Death and Zeal, so I took objectives that I did not start with, which were the ones on the sides and stuff. And then Lightning Strike I didn't get because I didn't actually kill off a unit or any characters or anything, so I didn't get a chance to do that one. Oaths of Moment is for the battle round, so technically I have 2 points sitting in there. One is the no failed morale test so far, and the other one is a core or character within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. So I currently have that one, but again, battle round, so next phase or next turn. And then engage in all fronts I do have. Now my Outriders are technically in his home quarter, but they're too close to the edge because they're just right on that line there, so I was not able to get the full 3 points. And that was my turn for points.
Alright, so looking after all the abilities that are everywhere, trying to figure things out. So the Rangers on the bottom stayed where they were. The Scorpius Dune Rider next to them moved forward to move towards the objective. The Castellan robots moved in to intercept. The Fulgurite Electro piece up top got out of their Dune Rider and moved their 6 inches around to flank the guys on there, and then the Dune Rider moved up. The Honor Guard Dune Crawler moved to the very bottom of the map to get line of sight on the Outriders on the bottom right. My tank, Scorpius Disintegrator, moved back because of the extra 3 inches I got on everything for my range. I pretty much have everything I need to be able to just start shooting heavy. And yeah, and that's basically, it's just movement, flanking, and things like that. Alright, so for shooting, insanely disappointing, but the Castellan robots tried to fire at the Blade Guard veterans. Only 1 was actually in range and did absolutely nothing. The Skitarii Rangers on the bottom, I used the stratagem to make them auto-wound on 4 up. It cost 2 CP, but because my Warlord is of the Artisan Guild, once per game, stratagem that has to do with like war gear and stuff can be reduced by 1 CP, so I paid 1 CP for it. And so they fired at the squad of Incursors on the objective. Not a single wound. That was disappointing. Then the Honor Dune Crawler on the bottom fired his neutron laser at the Outriders, and AP -4 with he was able to roll 1/6, and so they survived. With D3 +3 damage, they were just obliterated right out. So if he didn't roll that 6, that whole squad would have been dead. And then we have the Scorpius Disintegrator, who fired all of his weapons at the giant squad up top and did nothing. I was like, what a disappointment. He was able to reach it only because of his very, very powerful, well, plus 3-inch range to all the guns for the Lucius Forge world, yeah. And then, out of nowhere, the Scorpius Dune Crawlers, or Dune Riders, the one on the bottom fired at the squad of Incursors and successfully killed one and did a wound. And then the Scorpius Dune Rider up top fired at the attack bikes and killed one. So these transports are doing more work than anyone else. And then finally, my Warlord fired at the Eliminators on the other side, and he had one shot, hits on 2s, missed it. And that was the end of my shooting phase. Alright, so my Castellan robots charged in, no brainer. They're all able to swing. The Electro Priests charged in, multi-charged on the Khan, and the Outrider got him in on a 7. So for combat, Castellan robots squared up first. They swung, did pretty good. I just noticed they hit on 4s, slightly disappointing. But in the end, they managed to do 3 wounds with 9 damage each, so they killed one Outrider outright, and one took 3 wounds. And then, basically what happened is, I'm still new to the rules, but basically the Electro Priests, when they charge, I select 1 unit, and then for every guy that's in base contact, I roll a d6, and on a 6 they take a mortal wound. And so, like, we decided to do it there just because, like, it would be fine. And so they killed off the the Outrider that was there, or they just did 1 mortal wound, but that guy had 1 wound left, so he was gone. That's why he was moved there. And then the Electro Priests swung 5 of them. Well, they piled in first, then 5 of them swung on the Khan. Did 8 mortal wounds on him with their abilities. Their 6s to wound. And then the other 5 did 4 mortal wounds on the last survivor. And so that was it, and they consolidated moving towards the center, and the Electro Priests are very strong, and now because they have eliminated a unit, they're now stronger. They now have a 4-up invulnerable save, and some other buff to their shooting, I think. And that's it for the fight phase. Alright, for points, I have nothing going for me. Engage in all fronts, I would have if one of my Dune Riders was further into the enemy zone, but they aren't because of the new change of you have to be 6 inches from a quarter. So that sucks. Then Eradication of Flesh, it was not a vehicle that finished off a unit. It was all... If he didn't roll that 6, I would have gotten one for his Outriders. And it... What the crap? My thing just changed at the bottom. Shoot. Oh wait, Raise Banners, that was it. So Raise Banners, I have one on the way. The Tech Priest is doing, or the Techno Priest is doing it on my own, but so far it looks like I'm gonna have to win in the second half at this rate.
All right, you guys. So, essentially for movement, a lot of stuff moved. So I guess I'll start. I'm trying to think what moved first. I don't actually know. The blue Outrider Sergeant, all the way at the bottom, he ran, so he moved his full 20 inches, and he parked right outside these Skitarii Rangers. My purple Outriders at the top left basically moved to fully take this objective, since I think at this point stuff is going to be tied up in combat, so it doesn't necessarily matter too much what can see them. Then my Blade Guard Vets, Character, and Apothecary all moved into the middle, or moved farther up and closer, as did my red bike squad. They moved in range in view of everything. My Storm Speeder Thunderstrike moved out into view, and my reserve biker squad came into play. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, a whole lot happened. I don't remember the order that I did things. Oh, easy shots. Okay, so the Eliminators shot at the Castellans, and they were able to kill one off. So 2 shots went through, killed one. Then the purple Outriders shot at his Fulgrites, and they killed some of them off. I don't remember exactly how many. And then the red Space Marine Bikers, so this squad that's been on, did a split fire. The Multi-Melta shot at the Scorpius Dune Rider and failed horribly. And then all of their regular shots shot at those guys, taking them down to just 3 left. All the guys in the middle, so my character, the Apothecary, the Blade Guard Vets also shot at them, and they stuck around. And then moving down to the bottom, my Storm Speeder Thunderstrike shot his Twin Icarus rocket pod at the transport, doing 6 damage to it, so taking it down to half wound. And then his other 2 guns shot at the Onager Doomcrawler, but he rolled garbage, so I did 1 whole wound, which was, whatever. Then my Space Marine Biker Squad, the green one, shot at the transport with its multi-melta, and the rest of it shot at his Skitarii Rangers. And so the multi-melta destroyed the transport, forcing his Fulgurites out. Also, in the process,
losing 1.
I think he lost 1, yeah. And then they were able to kill off, 6 of these Rangers here? Yeah. And then the Incursors shot at the Fulgurites, killing off 1. So, not terrible for shooting, not great per se either, though. So yeah. Alright, you guys, so all of my charges made it. So the first charge that I did with the red squad failed initially. I did want them in, though. And so I used a command point to re-roll it, just to get them in, and they in fact did that. And green squad charged in. They were able to get in with no issues. And then my blue Outrider Sergeant got into the Skitarii. Hopefully he'll do something there. The purple squad got into his Dune Rider, just because it's kind of annoying being there, so I figured I might as well. I don't think they'll kill it, but now I didn't charge my Blade Guard in, and that is because if I were to charge them in, the characters sitting just behind them would be left out in the open, and they would not be able to. I don't think they would survive. So for that reason, I kept the Blade Guards out of combat. And we will see if that was a terrible mistake or not. Alright, you guys, so for combat, my big squad that attacked his Fulgurite Electro Priests, which was also his big squad, swung. On the first round, I killed off 6 of them, and then with the Sergeant, I killed... One more, because there was 2 left. So one guy managed to survive. And then I went down. He didn't interrupt, so I went down to my other big biker squad, and they killed off the 3 guys that were left. They consolidated towards the Scorpius Dune Rider to kind of give them some semblance of cover, I guess. Then I went up to my single Outrider Sergeant. He killed 2 Skitaris, I think. Is it 2?
Yeah.
And then... yeah, and then I went down to these other Outriders fighting his Dune Rider, and I did a single damage. And then he swung back. He did 2 damage on one of my bikes with his Fulgurite guy. And then he swung with his Skitaris, doing a single wound to my Outrider. And his Dune Rider actually did damage back to my Outriders, so it was tied combat, weirdly enough.
Yeah. My Electro Priest swung back, the survivor one, and successfully did 2 wounds. The Skitarii Rangers, they actually didn't lose anyone, I remember, and they were able to do 1 wound back to the Outrider Sergeant. And then
Lose anyone?
No, you didn't. And then the Dune Rider up top did 1 wound back to the Outriders, matching them blow for blow. And that was the fight phase.
Alright, you guys, so for points, I did get the full round of, the full set of primaries. I didn't get anything for Death and Zeal, because he has to be on or near objectives, and I have to take 1 from him, so as of right now, I do not have that. Lightning Strike, I was able to get 1 point for because I destroyed a unit in melee in a charge turn. Oaths of Moment, I was able to get 3 points for because I did the full 3 of them. Now, technically, that is for the battle round. But I don't know, my units are so small that they just die. They don't take morale, so that was the only variance. But well, I'll double check again at the end of the battle round. And Engage in All Fronts, I got 2 points because I am not in his final quarter just yet. So that was all of my points. So far I'm actually doing pretty good on points. But he also still has plenty of units left that have some really really mean shots. So we'll see what happens.
So for command phase stuff, the Secondaries next to the Tech Priest received his buffs, re-rolling, what was it? +1 to their AP and 6 inches to their range. Scutari gave his ability where he removed their negatives, so they don't have -1 weapon skill. I don't know. So I moved the Cataphren destroyers back. They got plenty of range, so no point in getting close. The Onager fell back, but everything is within range, has line of sight to every target. The Scorpius Disintegrator moved south, has range of the giant bike squad. And the Castellans moved up to intercept. And then finally, the Evasaur Assassin showed up 12 inches away from their Auspex scans, but within 9 inches their Apothecary. Alright, massive shooting phase. So, Cataphrons went first. So 4 of them had line of sight to the squad of bikers, and they just unloaded on them. Their weaker weapons barely did anything, but their strong weapons, their heavy 5, strength 5, AP -3, killed a good number of them. Then the other guy who couldn't see them fired at the Blade Guard. Then I had my Scutari Rangers with their buffs. They got to reroll 1s and to hit and wound, and had 1 extra AP. Did some pretty good damage against the bikers. Killed them pretty well, and just overall they actually did extremely well. They dropped them down to just 3 more bikes. Very good. And then I had the assassin up top shoot at the eliminators. Did nothing. I had the Scorpion Dune Rider shoot at the outriders he was fighting. Did 1 wound. The Castellan robots fired all their guns and did 2 wounds to the Blade Guard veterans. And then the Scutari Marshal fired and finished off the guy. And then my Onager Doomcrawler, which has been a very good shooter, doing a lot of kills, killed off his speeder. So I have D3 shots. I got 3. All of them hit, and 2 wounded. And he failed to save them. And just straight up, I rolled, so it's D3 plus 3, so I rolled 1 and a 6, so that turned to exactly 10 wounds, exactly what I needed, and it died. So that's very comforting. And then to follow that great show, my disappointment was immeasurable when my Scorpius Disintegrator fired at the Space Marine bikers and killed 1 and did 2 wounds. This is supposed to be like some sort of super heavy tank or heavy firepower, and he just keeps failing. Every time I roll for his Disruptor missile launcher, he keeps rolling 1s. He has a D6, keeps rolling 1s. Well then. Alright, so the Evasaur Assassin has 3d6 to charge, not 3d6 remove 1. He has 3d6. He charged and he rolled a 1, 2, and 3 against the Apothecary. So I've spent my 1 CP to roll that, and he made exactly 9. That was terrible, absolutely terrible. But he made it, and then the Castellan robots, of course, made it into their charge. Alright, so for the fight phase, the Evasaur went first, and so he swung all of his attacks into the Apothecary. So he has +2 attacks on the turn he charges, so he had 8 attacks. And because he would have killed the Apothecary, but the Apothecary's Feel No Pain spared him. So then I spent 2 CP to activate the Evasaur's ability to fight again. And so he split his attacks, 4 on the Apothecary and 4 on Corroso, and he finished off the Apothecary, just barely, with 2 wounds, and then he turned on Corroso and did 1 wound against him. And then the Castellans swung and managed to kill 1 Blade Guard veteran. And then up top then he started swinging back. His Outrider Sergeant on the bottom swung on my Scutari Rangers and did absolutely nothing to them. Because he does 1 damage, and so they get a 3-up armor save. So they've been surviving, and then they swung back and did absolutely nothing. And then my Dune Rider up top swung on his Outriders and did nothing. And then his Corroso Khan swung on my Evasaur and successfully did 4 wounds to him. So my Evasaur only has 2 left. And so then his Blade Guard veteran swung on my Castellans and did 6 wounds, but didn't kill any. And then his Outrider swung on my Dune Rider up top and did 3 wounds to it, bringing it down to 8. So far, we'll see how this goes. Alright, it still is not looking good. I'm not really claiming anything, and I'm getting destroyed. But however, I did get 3 points for Death and Zeal and I took an objective, the middle one. So I took the objective because I'm the only one who has a guy on it, and I killed a unit that was on it, the apothecary. So on that point, I'm actually doing a bit better, but I still don't have engaged on all fronts. Eradication of flesh. Hold on. I gotta look that up. I got my raise the banners finally for the first turn. So far, yeah, we'll see how this goes. It's not looking good.
Alright, you guys, so there was a lot of, basically everything that was in combat fell out of combat because as White Scars, I can fall back and still charge that turn. And so I am gonna do that, essentially. Now, the only things that weren't in combat that moved were the incursors, so they are objective secured, so I was able to move them back and still hold this objective, because I'm going to move them to take the middle objective. And then the big chunk of attack bikes that I still have left were able to book it, essentially, and make it all the way, hopefully all the way into its back quarter. Let's see if they're 6 inches. They're not, but they will be by the end of the phase, or the end of the round. And so they're able to get all the way back there, and so this will be an interesting round of everything. Yep. Alright, you guys, so essentially what had happened was, because so many units fell back, so I can fall back and charge, but I can't fall back and shoot. So I only had a couple of things that could actually shoot. So my eliminators shot at his Castellan robots. One went through, so they killed the guy with 1 wound. So that's something. The Incursors shot at the Scutari Rangers, and they killed 1. And then the bike squad, the big one, the multi-melter shot at the Dune Crawler, and it missed both shots, so it was a pile of garbage. Then the front 4 bikers shot at his Techno-Archaeologist. A bunch went through, but he apparently has a 2-up save, and they have no AP, so he still failed 2, but he is alive still. And then the back 4 guys shot their guns at the Scutari Rangers, and 2 died?
1 died.
2 died. 1. Okay, and 1 died. And then I forgot about the biker sergeant over here. He shot at the Cataphrons and did nothing. So, success. Alright, you guys, so for the charge phase, a lot happened, because basically everything that is combat-y is in combat now. So I guess the most interesting of these things is the big bike squad was able to charge all 3 of his characters at the same time. We'll see what happens, but they made that in. I didn't need a reroll or anything. And then I basically just started going around. So my single outrider at the bottom charged his Scutari Rangers. They got in. My Blade Guard vets charged the Castellan. They got in. I kept 1 Blade Guard just on the objective, though. So between him and my character, I have the middle. Then my character obviously charged the Everstor. He got in. My Outriders up at the top charged his Dune Rider. They got in. And then my Biker Sergeant charged his Cataphrons, and he got in. So just a whole lot of combat. And he can interrupt, but the question is, does he have something that's even worth that? Except maybe his Assassin. I don't know. Anyway. Alright, so, but yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so I started off with the most important combat, which was the bikers against all 3 of the characters. Now, that was also one of the most annoying combats. So they swung, the 2 guys were able to kill off the 1 character off on the side. I don't remember what he was called. But so the 3 guys swung on the Marshal, and unfortunately only did 2 wounds, or 2 damage, which means only 1 wound went through. Which is super annoying based off how many attacks they had. They just needed 3s and 4. No, 3s and 3s. I'm sure he saved a bunch of those, though. Then on the other guy, same issue. Somehow he was able to keep him alive just barely. He had a feel no pain. He rolled 3 6s, which was super annoying. He only had like 6 dice, so... Anyway, So 2 of his characters survive, just barely though, but you know, they're still alive. They don't get bracketed, so they're alive at their fullest. Then my Outrider Sergeant at the bottom swung on his Skitari Rangers. He actually killed 2 of them this time, which was nice. Because he had 2 damage on the charge, it voided their save ability, so he was able to take 2 down. Then he did interrupt, by the way, with his Everstore on Corsaro, but Corsaro was fine.
He only did 1 wound.
Yeah. And then Corsaro swung back and killed him. And then my Blade Guard vets, the saddest combat of this one, had a bunch of attacks, and they had +1 to wound. They had reroll once they hit, and they only did 2 wounds that went through. I rolled there was a bunch of dice, and there was 8 2s and 0 3s, and it was super annoying. But anyway, so he lived with 1, and then he scrunched one of the Blade Guards, which is what they deserve, because they're a bunch of idiots. Then I swung with my Biker Sergeant on his Cataphrons. 1 went through, and he just crunched 1, because it's a Thunderhammer, so any of them that goes through kills 1. And then the Outriders actually were able to do 4 damage to the Dune Rider, because again, my damage on the charge. So 2 wounds went through, which is 2 damage each, doing 4 damage. And so it was a pretty good combat phase, I would say.
And as for my swings back, my Rangers swung on their Outrider on the bottom, did nothing. My Castellan did crush one of those guys, but meh. My Skitari Marshal and my Tech Priest Manipulus swung on the Bikers that they were swinging on and killed 1 or 2. Up top, the Scorpius Dune Rider did nothing. And then the Cataphrons actually did 2 wounds against the Biker Sergeant in melee. So, meh.
Alright, you guys, so for points, this was a pretty good turn for me. I was able to get all 3 of the primaries. And then Death and Zeal, I was able to get the full 3 points because I took an objective that I did not start with, and I killed an enemy unit that was on it, which was one of his characters. With Lightning Strike, I was able to get 4 points, so the White Scars specific secondary, because I killed a character, and a unit was destroyed by melee from charging White Scars unit. And then Oaths of Moment, I got all 3 of them. I know, again, it's for the battle round, so technically there's still room for a failed morale test, but again, I'll adjust that if that happens. And so I was able to get 3 points for that, and I was able to get the full 3 points for engage in all fronts because my big biker unit is in his table quarter fully. And that was all of the points.
Alright, so we decided to call it there because by this point, Mechanicus cannot get it back. Just won't be able to, even if wiped out all the enemies in front of him, won't be able to get onto the points and have enough turns passed to be equal. And so, we go to MVP, LVP. For LVP, it's quite a close one. The Scorpius Disintegrator did nothing but take up space. Should have been an honor guard. That actually did something. It's just his guns were always weak, and every time I rolled for the Disruptor Heavy Missile, a D6, I kept rolling 1s. So this just absolutely failed. But it has a close second, the Skitari. They really just didn't do anything. They basically were tar pits, but they're not supposed to be tar pits. When they got their chances to shoot, they really failed. Getting that first time when an entire squad fired at 6 Space Marines and did absolutely nothing. It's they failed so hard. It was terrible.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that whole squad of 6 should have died. With all the damage and stuff going in, just nothing. The stupid transports did more damage than the Skitari. Yeah, and the only time the Skitari did anything good was just by sheer chance and killed a few bikes later on, but that was just ridiculous. But whenever I needed it, they failed. So MVP is kind of a 3-ish way tie. So the Castellan robots, the Honor Guard Doom Crawlers, and the Fulgrites. So the Fulgrites slaughtered your Warlord and the rest of the bikes there, and they took a tremendous amount of punishment, an absolute incredible amount. So these guys really
yeah, they were super annoying.
They were very powerful, so they are absolutely worth the 140 points for a 10-man squad. And the Honor Guard Doom Crawler, this thing was taking out guys left and right, almost wiped out a squad at the very beginning, just barely didn't, because this has the neutron laser, then wiped out your vehicle. just barely, but it still did that. So whenever it was up to shoot, it actually brought results. And the Castellans, they were a solid rock. They took a tremendous amount of punishment and were squishing your guys. They are Blade Guard veterans.
Blade Guard.
I mean, yeah, and that's it for my MVP, LVP. It's because I can't really say one thing was the best because everything was bad, but they did pretty good. So what do you got?
Well, I guess I have a couple of things. MVP, I think this was actually a pretty solid list. Like, I think it did well. The Outriders, they have a lot of attacks, but, they don't have tremendous damage until the Assault Doctrine, at least with White Scars. But I would say MVP is actually the classic Bikers. They were able to get around. They did a lot of shooting, so they were able to take out big chunks of stuff, even though the Meltas didn't always do so well. They had the option to do stuff, and one of the Meltas actually took out one of your transports in a single go, and that was impressive. Didn't do anything else the rest of the game, but and then they were able to jet around with their 20-inch movement and charge, and so they were able to get into your back corner. They were actually had a lot of utility going on. LVP, now I will say that the Kanon bike probably would have done pretty well for himself, but I did throw him out there really early in the game. Probably not the smartest thing. And then of course all those mortal wounds. So he probably actually would have rode that combat out if he didn't take 8 mortal wounds to the face. Because there's just literally nothing, not even a single stratagem or anything that I have that could have saved him. So that was annoying. But so he, I guess, just kind of has to sit in the LVP slot. Now you could wager that the Apothecary or even the Storm Speed or Thunderstrike, they actually really didn't do anything the whole game. The Thunderstrike did some damage on one of your transports, but then literally everything else he did failed, and then he just died in one turn. The Apothecary, he only had 2 Feel No Pains, I think, that happened while he was alive, and then he died. I didn't get to use his revivals or his heals or anything. So he kind of also did nothing. And yeah, so I'd say just the classic Bikers, their big squads with all their attacks and all their shots was actually pretty clutch for this one. The Outriders did pretty well for themselves, I think. They got paired up against some weird things. And then, of course, the ones that did that first turn charge, they actually did a fair bit of damage, but then they were subsequently cleared off. So, I guess technically the Eliminators, but I don't know. Anyway, so as far as MVP and LVP, Bikers did really well. LVPs were probably units that I really just didn't play as well. Not that they actually, so they didn't get a chance to really do anything. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Overall for this game, it's like Mechanicus are pretty complicated, but I rapidly learned what units were good and what units were not. And so, like, Rangers ended up as tar pits, but I don't want them to be tar pits. The only reason they were tar pits was because of the matchup and the Forge World that I chose. Get, like, +1 to my armor for damage 1.
That's so annoying.
And then melee wasn't doing too well. The Castellans were a solid wall, but I couldn't get off Marsh units. Like, I feel like I probably would have won if I got the first turn. That's like how big it is just because of strategy-wise and how things turned out.
It's possible. You had a lot of shooting, but of course your first actual round of shooting also did not go well for you. So there is that. But then, of course, so I don't know. It is quite a complex army to learn, and this is your first time playing them, so there's that. White Scars are also probably maybe a harder counter to a more shooty army, like the Admech, because they basically do the one thing, and it's run up and punch you in the face. And they did just that. It was actually kind of fun playing them, though, not gonna lie. But yeah. So it probably wasn't a great matchup for you, especially being the first time you played them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think it was good.
Yeah.
I think it was points-wise. I guess it wasn't super back and forth. But as far as blows going, I think each of us lost good chunks of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not good chunks, but lost kind of important stuff.
Yeah.
Like my con going out on the first turn with those Outriders, then Thunderstrike going out right afterwards. I lost almost an entire biker squad, turn afterwards, half my blade guard, So yeah, I don't know. I think it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting army to play, but next time I'll probably be much more efficient and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what I'll be playing next time.
Alright, well, GG's, GG.